Well, let's go back to the streets of Ottawa now. I wonder what it's like. Last I heard, the trucks have all been mopped up. It only took a few thousand police with guns and swinging batons, shooting some journalists along the way. Just as punctuation, joining us now is our friend David Menzies via Skype. David, great to see you again. How are things in Ottawa today?
Well, Ezra, I can tell you this city, at least in terms of the downtown core, it's a virtual ghost town. And rightly so. There are about 100 checkpoint Charlies, if you will. These are police officers who are at major intersections and quite literally saying, your papers, please. And by the way, Ezra, your papers are no longer good enough. On Friday, they started asking out-of-towners, we need to see your confirmation number for your hotel room. Well, as of last night, that was amped up to, they look at the confirmation number and then they phone the front desk. And hopefully you're not on one of those answering machine loops. Your call is very important to us, so we're going to make you wait half an hour in minus 20 weather to get to it. So, but the point is, Ezra, as you said in your preamble, things have been mopped up here. I'm at the corner of Queen and Bank Street. Ezra, this was the demonstrators' last stand on Saturday night. This is where about 800 or 900 of them remained dancing to the tune of We're Not Gonna Take It by Twisted Sister. And the police line, well, they've put up a fence, of course. There's multiple fences as you go north, heading to the Parliament buildings. And I think the strategy on Saturday night, instead of whack 'em and stack 'em with their batons, they just waited till the demonstrators got cold and tired and hungry or needed to use the washroom and so on. So it dissipated peacefully thanks to the assist from Mother Nature. But and I want to point out something too, Ezra. It's so perverse that this Emergencies Act is going into play, going towards Senate approval, when there is no emergency anymore. There are no demonstrators, there are no truckers. And what's more, don't you find it crazy, my friend, that in 2019, Justin Trudeau issued a press release applauding the 100th anniversary of the 1919 Winnipeg general strike, in which the entire city of Winnipeg was shut down. But because that was for workers' rights, because that was pro-union, Justin Trudeau was down with that revolution, big time. But when a sliver of that comes to Ottawa in 2022 in his working backyard, that is intolerable, and he needs to put into place the reimagined War Measures Act. What a disgrace.
Yeah. Well, that general strike, of course, was a communist strike, which may explain Trudeau's support for it. This form of a general strike, which is what I've been calling the action by the truckers, it's not communist. It's against communist-style surveillance and tracking and personal invasiveness. And many truckers are autonomous. They're self-employed. They own their own rig. That's why Trudeau hates it. But mainly Trudeau hates it because it challenged him. If Trudeau were in power in 1919, he would have been against the strike because, of course, it would have challenged him. You mentioned that you're in a place that on Saturday night was quite busy, but it's Tuesday night, 3 days later, and the state of emergency is still in effect, and the police are still on the streets. I should tell you that there is no legal basis for them to ask the questions of you that they're asking. Are they letting you pass? Because I remember a couple of nights ago watching your live stream, and they literally would not let you pass. Are they letting you pass now?
I have an update hot off the press to you, Ezra. As you recall on that live stream in which Lincoln Jay and I were asked for our papers, and then, they wanted to confirm that where we were staying and whatnot. The female OPP officer said we had to go to Ottawa Police Headquarters to get permits in order to practice journalism. And our colleague Mauricio went to Ottawa Police Headquarters just a few hours ago, I should say, and was asking about that. And the superintendent said, no, there's no permitting system. And in terms of us getting to Wellington Street, where the CBC is, so somehow they got past 3 levels of steel fencing. What he said, Ezra, if you can imagine, is that it's officers' discretion. So if you as a member of the media say, can we please get to Wellington to get a shot of the House of Commons? And the first officer says, nope, that is verboten. Then you go to the next one. and the next checkpoint, and the next checkpoint. So it sounds to me that either these guys don't know what they're talking about, or they're making things up on the fly, Ezra. And I might say this, as for some of those Ottawa residents that complained about the sheer number of big rigs in the downtown Ottawa area for the last 3 weeks, what we've seen here is that blockade, that inconvenience has been replaced by something far worse. And it sees police checkpoints, concrete barriers at major intersections, and 3 levels of fencing so that there's no way you can get to Parliament Hill, which was not the case when the truckers were here. Anyone could walk to Parliament Hill. There were bouncy castles and hot tubs being set up. So I guess for those in Ottawa that were wishing the truckers were gone, careful what you wish for, because what you've received right now is far worse than several trucks letting off a bit of steam.
Yeah, and of course the truckers did not set up checkpoints where they whimsically decided who could or couldn't pass. The fact that police get to decide, well, I hate your reporting, or you're a pro-lockdown reporter, you can go. You've criticized police brutality, you can't go. You are a supporter of Justin Trudeau, you work for him, in fact, at the state broadcaster, you can go, but you work for Rebel News or True North or some independent news agency, so you can't go. I'm not sure if I shared this analogy with you before. When I went to Iraq, we were driving through the country and there were so many checkpoints, and by checkpoint, just a guy at the side of a road with a gun and maybe a Jeep and a couple other guys, and you had to stop or they'd shoot you, and they would, and your driver would roll down the window and talk to him. And I don't know what they said because they were not speaking a language I knew. But every little checkpoint was a moment of stress. Is it going to be a robbery? Is it going to be a political enemy, a different warlord? Now, we were with the worst warlord of them all, so they were all scared of us. But that idea of being at the mercy of some thug with a gun and different rules at every check stop, and you had to jump to their satisfaction, that is not a concept of the rule of law that we are familiar with in Canada. We are not familiar with police saying you can or can't go based on their own taste. That is illegal. That's unconstitutional. That is a coup. That's the suspension of civil liberties. And that's the law of the jungle, which is, I guess, what we have in Canada now.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Ezra. And I want to go back to what you said a little earlier in terms of us being media non grata. You know that the Justin Trudeau Liberals, their hatred towards us, it's absolutely visceral. And the proof is in the pudding. On Saturday, when our dear colleague Alexa was shot in the thigh with I guess what seems to be a tear gas canister at point blank, I might add, that is so over the top. And, I think we got a little hint of the Emergencies Act and the violence that goes with it, at least if you're deemed to be an enemy of the state, back in December when I was standing outside a Toronto restaurant waiting to ask Justin Trudeau a question on a public sidewalk, and his henchman essentially manhandled me, slammed my head into a wooden fence. It was almost foreshadowing of what we're seeing on a far larger level here in the city of Ottawa.
Yeah, and I noticed that the Canadian Association of Journalists has been completely silent about both your case and Alexa's case. She was literally shot. And the Canadian Association of Journalists, their big quarrel is that some of their government journalists were heckled by truckers. That we were heckled. How dare the truckers are revolting. They certainly are,
Ezra, you're so right. I mean, when we went to the press conference held by the interim chief of police in Ottawa, Steve Bell, he said, when I asked, one of my questions was, how did this happen to my colleague Alexa? And he said he was unaware of this. Yeah. Unaware. She has been interviewed by journalists from the world over about this egregious incident. He doesn't know about it. And then I could have scripted this any better in terms of, putting out a Mad Magazine narrative. At the end of the questioning, the chief said, just one more thing. I'd like to applaud how members of the media, meaning mainstream members of the media have been covering this. It's come to my attention that some of them, there were slurs uttered towards them and other unnice language. And there's investigations, Ezra, afoot on hurt feelings, verbal hurt feelings. As for Alexa, nothing to see here, even though that was physical violence. And Ezra, God forbid, if that canister had hit her in the head, I just wonder what state Alexa would be in today. And you're so right. When it comes to all these journalism associations and free speech associations and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the silence is deafening. Had that happened to, Rosemary Barton at the CBC, I think we already see a royal commission being struck right now, my friend.
Yeah. Well, there's so much disgrace to go around our political class, the police themselves, the government journalists. As I just did in my monologue, I mean, the New York Times sent in a war reporter to cover, which I think is probably a good choice, and someone who didn't have someone who just covered the news pretty accurately, referred to police having guns, and 20 media party journalists shrieked at them, "Correct that, there were no guns."
What?
There were plenty of guns. We all saw guns. One gun was used on Alexa. But the fact that these reporters thought their most pressing duty was not to do their own journalism, but to stop the New York Times from doing journalism, I think shows the state of the profession. Well, stay safe. Let us know what's happening there. And if any cop doesn't let you pass, please do me a favor. Get their name, their badge number, and which police force they're with, and pass it on to me, because we'll file a professional standards complaint against them. I find it unacceptable. Even if the corrupt chief of police of Ottawa thinks it's fine, in my mind, it's unacceptable that police can pick and choose which journalists get to walk freely in the city. That's simply illegal. And if they don't listen to it from us, maybe they'll listen to it from the Police Standards Commission.
I will definitely do that, Ezra, and thank you so much for having me on your show tonight.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.